This is the Three Skeevers podcast.
All right, episode 5 of the Three Skeevers podcast with Grim from Grimsforge Gaming and myself, Icy from Icyfire Gaming. How you doing, Grim?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. We have a special guest today in studio, the one, the only Grimhallow. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. In fact, it's actually confusing to hear you call anyone else Grim. I was almost like, oh, hey, right in the middle to interrupt.
Yeah, I was actually planning, should I call him Grimhallow GH, Mr. Hollow? And I'll probably change it up.
No, Grimhallow is great. It's one word.
Okay, I'll just settle with that. Okay. Do you guys
That'll
mind if I tell my first story of how I encountered Grimhallow one day?
Yeah.
I've never heard this. Yeah, go ahead.
This isn't scripted. So it was I think early January 20 when I was first learning about, or when Grim introduced me to his stamina Nightblade build, and his videos are awesome, and he said, you should check out Grimhallow. So he sent me some of your clips, and I was like, wow, this guy is freaking awesome. So about like a week or two later, I'm out in Cyrodiil with one of the guilds that I was with, and I was running my Stam DK, and Grim was helping me with my CC control, getting my shield assault and immobilize down. So I was like, you know what, let me test this out and show this PvE guild what I got. So I port to where they were, one of these keeps, and they were just capping it, and there was some DC running around outside. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go see if I can help these guys clean up. So I go to the northwest corner, and as soon as I get to the entrance of the base platform, I see this little shrimp DC guy, and I'm like, you know what? Let me show these people what I got. So I shield assault in, stun him, hit him with the immobilize, and then at that moment, I had like time just kind of froze for me where I saw the name and it said Grimhallow, and I said, oh no. I immediately apologized. I did a backwards dodge roll and just pretended like nothing even happened because I did not want anything that I saw in those videos to happen to me. And one of the guys was like, hey, you all right? You kind of came out that room pretty quick. I said, no, didn't. Not everybody's gone. DC's left. So,
nothing going on in there.
Nothing going on in there.
Cleared him out.
Yeah, so that was my first encounter with Grimhallow. I
Does
didn't
that mean
die.
We've never fought?
We have never fought other than you dodge rolling out of the immobilize and then me running, not having anything to do with that. So
that's so funny, dude.
Yeah. But I was
so
shocked.
You in game either. I hadn't seen you in game until we were in the sewers a couple nights ago, and you had somebody with you that you were training, and that was my first time ever actually seeing you in person in game.
Yeah, nice. No, that was a lot of fun. That was a great night. I don't recall seeing you.
Oh yeah, no, this was back in, I think, early.
Oh no, sorry, I meant Grim. I was
yeah,
trying to bait him into saying that he was hiding in a corner, just watching from the shadows.
Okay.
No, I was the guy that kept shield assaulting into you, and you were just sneaking all over the place, and I was like, don't let him go, and I shield assault, low slash, trying to slow you, and boom, you're in your shade over here, and we're like, he's behind us, and he's over here. He's got us surrounded.
So
Dude,
definitely
good stuff.
A slippery guy.
Yeah,
can confirm.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I appreciate that. It's really like, it's definitely still surreal to me that people like have memories of the first time they saw me. That's kind of cool. Was I purple or orange at this point?
I think you were orange.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because like your guy, he looks like, with all the skills that you have right now, your guy, he looks like he's been through hell, and it shows with how awesome he is at just systematically, systematically breaking people down and eliminating groups and stuff. It's like, yeah, this guy, he's been through a lot, and with all the tattoos or the markings he has in his body, and your skill with it just makes it perfect.
Well, hey, thank you. Yeah, I think one of the secrets to looking like an edgelord is that it kind of works if you can actually kill people.
Mm-hmm.
No,
this is
Absolutely.
true. Yeah, this is true. I went to Grim's house, and we were Grimhallow's house, and we were doing some duels, and they did not go my way. None of them at all. And it was the thing that I took away from that, he's like full of knowledge and available for training sessions, by the way. But the thing I took away from it was his movement. Everything was very nonchalant. Like his evading, his blocking, his healing was off the charts, and just very systematic. That's exactly the word for it. I see very systematic and very, very dangerous. So
You guys are flattering me. It's working. It's working. I'm blushing over here. But
So-
yeah, I mean, just time, you know. Like I've logged 6,000 hours in ESO,
Jesus.
and I've
Yeah.
been PvPing it for like 4,000 of those.
Wow.
And yeah, like, you know, it just becomes muscle memory,
Yeah.
which is what you want. Like, you want to be automatic. You don't want to have to think about what you're doing. It's all a reaction.
Yeah, I'm the same way with my cleanses on my Warden. Whenever I see like something pop up at the top right of my screen, I know to just instant cleanse it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a flex.
Hmm.
Totally.
So with 6,000 hours, how many of those would you say have been on your Nightblade?
I'd say probably, I want to say like 3,500 have been on Nightblade as a class. Maybe a little bit more if you include Mageblade. On my main character, that's around 2,000 actually. So a little less. I mean, I've got 10 characters, and a third of my time is on one of them. So I mean, that's fair enough, especially since I never PvE on him. So you have to imagine any PvE that I do ever is not on my main character. I've got separate guys just for PvEing because I don't want to mess up, you know, my CP.
Right. So the hours, because you seem to be giving very specific hours.
Yeah.
Is there like, how do you get those numbers? Is that like an add-on or somewhere in ESO?
No, /played. You
Oh.
can go onto each character and just type in /played, and it will give you an exact time that you've been logged in on that character.
Oh, look at that. Learn
So
something
the
new today.
manual way is to go onto every one of your characters and /played, and then you can record them all. There might be an add-on that tracks it. I'm sure there could be. A lot of people track it by their Steam hours, but I'm pretty sure that includes the launcher, so that can be deceiving.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I mean, that's kind of combo of that.
Nice.
So with that many hours on your character, it sounds like you only use that Nightblade. Like this person is designed and its sole purpose is to PvP and kill people, right?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much.
What's the evolution of that character? Like, can you explain like when you first started out playing as a Nightblade and what the journey was like to where you are today? Like people seek you out for the highest level Nightblade training, like they come find you on the top of a mountain, you know, on a mountaintop, and you know you're juggling swords and stuff.
I sure can, actually. I can do that for you. So I started playing Standblade was my first class. I was, like a lot of people, a Wood Elf Bowtard as my very first character ever. And even in the beta, I was a Wood Elf Bowtard. And what happened is after the beta, I didn't buy the game at launch because I thought, you know what, I'm not really comfortable with this price tag. Like the content to cost just wasn't there for me. And I think it was like the week it went, not free to play, but like, you know, buy it once and then you don't have, there's no more necessary subscription. My friends are like, hey man, you love the Elder Scrolls, you have to get into this. And they were all on 80. So they bought it for me, and I hopped on 80. And so it was a Wood Elf Nightblade from day one. And because that was actually one of my favorite characters in Oblivion, which is my favorite Elder Scrolls game besides ESO. I guess it's not really fair to say that ESO is not my favorite Elder Scrolls game when I've got 6,000 hours in it. But
Yeah.
but my favorite of the like first like person, or not first person, but single player Bethesda RPGs is Oblivion, and my favorite character in that was a Wood Elf illusion bow character. So it was not a very difficult motif to choose for me.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, it was like, you know, leveling, learning the game, stuff like that. When I got into PvP, it was actually on a DK because I watched Lefty Lucy's videos.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, this guy's awesome. He makes DK look so cool. I'm going to play that for a bit. And I loved it. But it was pretty quick that I was missing Standblade. And so when I decided to switch to DC is when I made this character. And I actually started watching Kina PKK.
Mm-hmm.
his Mage Blade videos were inspiring to me. I like watched those and loved them and thought, okay, PvP is so much more than I thought it could be. It's so much more dynamic than I had realized. There's so much more depth to it. And I watched him like mechanically break things down into little parts and was understanding what, the foundations of PvP were. And I thought, I have to be in that guild. Like his guild Legion, I have to be in it. And I would see them in Cyrodiil every now and then and go, oh my gosh, that's them. Oh. And so I made my first PvP Nightblade on DC, which is Uriel, the one that you know now. And he was originally a Breton Mageblade. And I didn't switch him to a Stamina Nightblade until I realized about a month into it that even though Keena's really cool, Mageblade wasn't really my calling. It was definitely Stamblade. And I had actually previously emped on AD while I was learning PvP. So I remember very vividly my first 1v3 while I was trying to emp, and it was just, grind every day. And at the time we were actually losing the campaign like dramatically. So it was just me going out by myself, getting destroyed by a pack of 6 people, but killing one, right? And so I got 3,000 AP for it. I was like, okay, I'll go back out. And so it was, it was grueling, but I kept doing it because I really wanted to emp. And that forced me to learn. And during that like 1 week of grinding, I got so much better from just like trying to figure it out, listening to videos in the background, and trying to figure out like what Stamblade is all about. And I was still bad. And I eventually did emp, and I was still bad. I got 1v1 as an emp. I was so embarrassed about it. But it was by a good player, so it doesn't matter. And I didn't leave it there. I didn't give up because of that. I switched to DC, made my Mageblade, eventually switched him back to a Stamblade, and from there, just kind of took off. I was desperate to get into Keena's guild, which was Legion, so I decided that my way to do that would be to make a video. I was going to make a video demonstrating what I knew, and that I had not so much the skill to join, but the potential. That's all I wanted to prove. If I could prove I had the potential, maybe they'd adopt me and then just teach me how to play. So my first public video went out on June 25th of 2017, and it's a 1vx video called Player versus Players. It has like 3 fights in it, I think. And it actually, for a first video, had 677 views. I was so psyched, very happy about that. And I mean, that's what it has now. I think it had like a couple hundred in the first weeks or something, But it was actually none of the fights he was impressed with. He thought they were all garbage, except for the first fight. And what he was impressed with wasn't that I killed the guy. It was how fast I looted the characters after I killed the guy. He was like, yeah, you have the potential to like get into a rhythm and to just pick things up. You didn't even think about it. You just reacted. You're like, oh, there's the glow. I know that glow. And you just turned and looted him and then kept going. And that is what made me realize that you could be good at PvP. And I was like, what? But the video's like 9 minutes. You didn't like any of the fights? And he's like, no, they're all bad. They're all trash. I'm like, well, okay. I'm glad the looting was good. But so he let me in, and they taught me PvP a ton. And so that was like, it was shortly after that I released my first build video. And then my first big build video was the new meta, and that was in Somerset, and that was on June 4th of 2018. So that was like a full year later of just like training and playing with these guys and releasing videos really steadily and just trying to get really good. And so then I was at the point where I felt very confident in my builds. And so I was ready to call it like, hey, this is the new meta. This is where the meta has changed. And the implication has never been that I'm creating the meta. It's just like, hey, here's where Stamblade fits in this new meta. Like, and the idea is I'm going to break down every little bit of what the meta is, how it's changed, and then I'm going to address those issues and changes with a build. Because for theory crafting, I very strongly believe that you have to pick a problem first and then solve that problem with your build. You can't say, I want to play this style, or I want to play in heavy armor, or I want to play dual wield. I just think that always creates haphazard builds. If you build to solve a problem, you'll come up with the best solution to that problem. And you got to like unhinge your mind from what you think is going to be good and test things that you think might be bad. And that might include heavy armor or dual wield or brawly playstyles or super ganky play, like whatever. It could include anything. We have to open your mind to it. And so that was the idea of my first build video. And people seemed to like that. No one else was really doing that at the time. People were releasing 7-8 minute build videos, and obviously people still do. But for new players, it's really helpful to have someone break down every single aspect. You get like a tutorial and a build all in one. And another thing that always bothered me about build videos that I was seeing is that there's never gameplay. Like no one backed up what they said. They're like, oh, this is a great build. And I'd always comment like, can I see it?
Right.
Like that's a big deal. I want to see it in action. I want to know if it's good so that when I'm playing, if I die, I can say, oh, yeah, that was my fault. Not, am I, hurting myself with a bad build? So that's when I started creating content there. Oh, just so you know, you're echoing a little bit again.
Am I?
Just a little bit, yeah. But you might listen back later and go, I regret.
No edits here.
Yeah, no edits here, dude. No way.
Do you know what this means, though?
What do you mean?
Do you know what this means? This means there is hope for me, because the number one thing that bugs Icy about some of my videos is we're in the middle of fighting a Zerg, and I'll loot someone. I'll loot a dead mob while we're fighting. And he's like, I hate that little pop-up window. You're looting things while we're in the middle of a big fight. So there's hope for me. There's hope for me.
Well, first of all, you have to turn on auto loot.
Thank you. Grimhallow, please be the saving grace for this man, because I've been trying to get him to turn on auto loot for the entire time, because because equally I also think there's hope for me, because if you have auto loot on and you're also looting trash mobs during fights, then I think I'm on the right path. So that gives me hope. But please, Grim, please turn on auto loot.
Nope. I select their corpse, and then I go through the things, and I decide
Oh my
what I want.
That's so funny. No. Although during like the IC event, I can see the appeal to that, because you just want to pick out the Legion strong boxes, and for some reason those are always last.
Yeah.
They're always last. And that can be annoying. But besides that, there's no excuse. Come on. No auto loot.
It calls to me. The corpse is glowing on the ground, and we don't know what type of riches it has. And yeah, we're fighting 10 people right now, but
oh my gosh,
it's right there.
And I'm not getting triggered live during these fights, because when I see you stop for a moment, and I'm like, ugh, I know he's picking out which one when we got to kill this guy, but hey.
Yeah. I've got 3 of them on me, Grim. Get over here. And I'm like, hang on. I'm sorting through trash right now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, see that I'd get a little pissed too.
And he's the damage. He's my damage guy.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to worry about that. Like they would have all been dead by the time the looting starts with you in the group. So
yeah, maybe we'll see. But I also loot a lot faster, so it might not have been an issue for that reason.
Right, with that auto loot.
Exactly. I mean, you just sell the trash later. Just make more room in your inventory.
I'll look into it.
You can buy more bag space with the money you get from selling the trash.
I like this. Now you're speaking my language.
Exactly. It's all about efficiency.
What would you say are like notable milestones? Like the first group that you wiped? Like you said that, I guess your first milestone is just even starting, right? And continuing to throw yourself at the lion and make up your mind that you want to get good at it. But what would you say are some things that stick out and you felt like you leveled up in that moment?
Yeah, well, you know what? Actually, even you saying that has like sparked something new in me. But what I was telling before I joined Keena's guild and switched to DC and all of that, I saw him in Ralka. I had watched his videos and I was like, oh, hey, that's him. So I whispered him. And it's cool now. People do that to me and I get all nostalgic about it because it's like, oh my gosh. Oh, that was me. But I was like, hey, I'm going to be in your guild. He was like, who are you? And basically, like, we got to talking, and and I said, I really, really believe that in this game, if you really want to do it, you can do it. Like, if you want to be good at PvP, you can do it. You can learn, and you can like practice the mechanics. You don't have to be particularly gifted. You have to pay attention. You have to put in effort. You have to overcome adversity. Like, you're gonna die a lot. So you got to be ready for that. But if you can get through all of that, anyone can 1vx. 100%.
Yeah.
I don't believe that there are huge barriers to that besides knowledge and time. And I mean, that's no small barrier, but you can overcome it, by learning and practicing. So that's the first thing, you ask, you throw yourself to the lion. That's exactly what you do. You learn the fundamentals by like watching videos, adopting them from other people, and you can accelerate that by talking to really good players or training with them. But that's what you have to do, is you have to practice well and practice often and understand why things work. With a lot of build videos, they'll just give you a build. And that was the important part of explaining why it works and then showing how I play it so that people can really understand what's going on under the surface. Because those people that say, oh, you're exploiting or whatever, they just don't know. They just haven't realized. I had someone during the IC event fire a Relentless at me from like 20, 30 meters away, like the maximum range of the Relentless from stealth. And I heard it and had like 4 seconds to block. So I'm just like sitting there casually and right click. And immediately I get a message like, auto blocking cheater. Like, dude, do you realize that you can hear the Relentless? Like, maybe that never occurred to you, but like that was the most obvious tell ever. But if you don't know that, like, how are you going to trick people into getting hit? And that's such a big deal. So it's tough, but you can't make excuses for yourself, and you just have to grind it out and try and grind it well, grind it efficiently, but anyone can 1vx. So when I realized that, I told Kina, and he's like, such it is with life. If you believe you can do it, you can do anything. That's not just true in the game. And I was like, oh man, this guy is a philosopher. And so then I was like, now I have to join his guild. And I wasn't really sure if I could do it, but I believed. And so that was step one. Step two was making these videos. And after I made one, I bought the program to do it just to impress Kina. And well, that kind of worked out, I guess, even though he hated all my fights. But so I just thought, hey, I'll just keep making videos, because why not? I like recording my gameplay and watching it back, and I'll just make videos for myself, and that's okay. And then people started watching them. And when I made the new meta Somerset video, that was like my first one that people really took seriously. And I thought, oh, I could do this. I could make videos. Like, I really enjoy it. I've been doing it for a year. And so I got serious about it and started making real thumbnails around that time. That was like in 2018. And so a few weeks later was my first like tips and tricks video, which was damage combos. That came out on June 15th. And that was the one that had my first real thumbnail. I had less than 300 subs. And then between then and August, like, I hit my first 1,000, and it was crazy. Like, I released what I called the build, and it exploded. That was like my Poisonous Serpent Spriggans build, I think. And that one really set me apart because no one else was running that at the time. I'd found a set that was extremely difficult to grind out compared to other sets, that was really annoying to get, but was really underrated because ZOS had just recently nerfed procs. They could no longer crit. They did less damage. But somewhere in there, they kind of stealth buffed this little set called Poisonous Serpent, and no one had noticed it. And it just became way more consistent. And so at the time, Spriggans was super powerful. So I was running Poisonous Serpent with Spriggans because they complement each other. And Troll King was super overtuned. So you didn't need weapon damage for healing because you could just run Troll King. And so I was running something super unique. And I loved it, and I was getting great results. And so sharing that with people really kind of, I think that's what started to sort of shoot me into prominence. And then I just kept making videos that would teach people how to play the game, and I've been doing that ever since.
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. You said a couple things there that totally resonate with me. One of them is you have to explain the why when you present a build, right? The why these sets and why these abilities on the bar, because the why is going to help them be successful in the build. And I'll get this regularly. I'll put a build video out and people are like, Jesus, just tell us what armor sets, And it's like, hey, I'm telling you what armor sets within the first 5 to 10 minutes of the video, but then the rest of the time I'm explaining the why. And sure as can be, what happens is these people will stay there for the first 5 minutes, put the build on, and then they come back and say this build's trash. And so I reach out to them and I'm like, what problems are you having? You know, and after 30 minutes of asking them different questions and things like that, I uncover that they're not even running the same build. You know,
Yeah.
they've subbed out a set completely. They're not using the same abilities at all. They've done their own amalgamation of, you know, like whatever it is, and then they feel like they're going to go on and say the build is trash. And the why is so important, I think.
Yeah, dude, that happens all the time. It's so funny, especially when I was running like Poisonous Serpent and Clever Owl were two big ones that people objected to because they're like, oh man, those sets have caveats. You have to do something to make them work. You have to light attack weave and have a poison ability. And what if I don't want to run a poison ability? And so what they do is they just wouldn't use the set. And then I'd have people come up to me and say exactly that, like, hey man, this build sucks. Like, I'm running your build. I just subbed out Poisonous Serpent for Hunding's Rage. Why isn't this working? And you're like, well, dude, that's not my build.
Yeah.
Like,
not the same build.
not at all.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? And oh my gosh, that happens all the time.
All
the time.
You should tell him the story when we were running the sewers and we ran into his doppelganger.
Oh, dude. So we picked up this guy, and we didn't realize until afterward, but he died a couple times to some banners, and I said, all right, let me go see what the heck's going on here. So I say, hey, you might want to look into your build or something, because it's not really doing too well down here. So he's like, no, build's fine. I just got to get used to it. And then I said, well, what are you running? So then he said, the 3 gear sets that he's running. And I'm like, okay. And then Grim's like, well, that's Grimhallow's build. So you go ahead. Pick it up from here.
Well, and not only did he just name each one of your sets or whatever, but he had the same skin as you, the same everything. So I kind of had an inclination, like on the fan bus. And but it wasn't that the build was bad. His lack of skill, his lack of understanding, his lack of finesse, his lack
of 6,000 hours.
His lack of 6,000 hours. Yeah. And so, and he was so mad, and, he just was not happy at all. And Icy and I were talking about it afterwards. I was like, I mean, you can pick up, we know what that build does. We see what it does on Grimhallow. Like, we also see what it does on someone like that,
I remember saying
a build can't make you good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember thinking back then when we were talking about, like, who the heck does this guy think he is, that he could just put on any build and then run it the same way as whoever? Because I know even when I was running your Mandalorian build, the melee Stamblade, I watched the video several times, and I knew that I had to play the build exactly the way you were showcasing it in the BGs. Coming from the shadows, doing all that stuff. And if I wasn't doing that, did you really expect me to come back and say, yeah, Grim, I know I just started PvPing with you for like the last month and a half, but your build's trash? Like, that to me makes no sense. And I'm also not surprised that that's people's first reaction. They just try something and then they just kind of go with their feelings.
It's got to be the build, right?
It's got to be the build. Why would I ever be at fault?
Right.
What does Grimhallow know? He's not
right.
But also, I got one more point.
Yeah.
So to the comments about how people are always, hey, can you just give me the items and everything so I can just go run it instead of explaining all this stuff? I know I just put out my first 2 videos, but I'm trying to take the best of both worlds. And I know I use Vicor as an example where he did just a 1-minute video, just, hey, he hovers his mouse over every single piece, all of his skills, his
console style video.
The potion thing, done in a minute. And I said, you know what? Why don't I do a short build video just like that? Hey, if you want you want to know exactly what I'm running, here it is, done 1 minute. Don't complain. But then I put a link into another video where I explain everything in detail, and that'll be like 20, 30 minutes, however long it is. I feel like that would be, for me, I only make support builds, but I've only made my first two, so we'll see how well it goes. But I think that might be the best way to do it. Satisfy the people who just want the 1 minute thing, and then the people who actually care, want to learn and improve, then they'll come over to the long form.
Yeah. Well, that's, a lot of people ask me, do you have a written version of this? And while I don't have a website, and likely never will, because I don't want to maintain something like that, I divide my time up enough as is. So though it would be wonderful, it just isn't in the book, not in the cards, not in the books, whatever. But what I do now is I add, first of all, timestamps to the whole video, so you can see each part where it is. So if you have to go back later and say, okay, why not Mythics? I don't run a Mythic right now, so why not? You could just go back and re-listen to that part if you want. And then I also put the sets that I'm recommending, not only in this build, but for the patch. So I've been putting the sets down below, and then I have a link to a public Google Doc that has all my CP and an explanation for it. And that way, anyone can go check that at any time. And it's really hard to copy CP from a video, so just having it all in a spreadsheet is really helpful. And then in my Discord, like for people who are in my Discord, I actually have a read-only channel that's just Grim's builds, and just patch to patch, I keep that updated. So anyone who wants to know who's in the Discord makes it really easy to just see on paper what it is.
Yeah. See, when you start talking like documents and Excel spreadsheets and stuff, you're speaking Icy's language.
Dude, spreadsheets are awesome.
They really are awesome.
Yeah. So that moment that Icy described where he goes headfirst into a battle and he runs into you, and then he, very gracefully apologizes and then backs out of the situation. Do you ever recall, so you've spent some serious amount of time playing the game. I played since beta. I did take some time off, but there's been guys like Lefty Lucy and King Richard and oh gosh, I'm trying to think of all these different, Cypher PK and Fingrush is still here, and just all these guys that have been here, like the OG,
Right,
But
yeah.
have you ever had a moment with those guys that you'll remember, like where you ran into them or they're Xing and you stumble across it or anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I guess the funniest one, especially now, is back when I was an AD Botard, for lack of a better term. I tried to gank King Richard on his Sork one time, and it was with a friend too. So we both just were sitting on the bridge, just bow ganking people as they walked by, just chatting about life and stuff, not really taking PvP seriously, but you don't have to when you're bow ganking. And he walked by on his horse, and we ganked him, and he didn't die, and he killed both of us. We're both like in stealth, running away, trying to shade poof all over, turning invisible. I don't know how, but he got both of us out of stealth and just walloped us. And I was like, some people are really good at this game, dude.
They're out there.
They're out there.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the last time I remember seeing one of those like people that went on to do other things and became really big. I never got to fight Cypher, unfortunately. I never got to fight Lefty Lucy, as far as I know, because back then I wasn't even. That was when there were still vet ranks. I was like VR2, and Lefty Lucy had almost, like, he was on his way out of the game. He was starting to upload some BDO content, stuff like that, and I was not even CP 200 at VR like 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever. So that was a long time ago.
Did you have any more questions for him, Icy, before we move on?
Nope, go ahead. Keep going. You're rocking it. You're rocking it.
Okay. So what's the day in the life of Grimhallow like right now? Like, what's your current day schedule?
Dude, it's busy. I'm a little bit of a workaholic, just in general. So, obviously I have a day job. I work a lot at that, and I'm on Twitch at least 3 nights a week for at least 3 hours, usually. When I can, I'm on 5 nights a week. I make a video roughly every month or so, and I try and have one for every major patch. And usually, well, in fact, exclusively, those videos come out after the patch has been out for 2 weeks because I insist on playing the build myself in open world in the patch that I'm releasing the video for. I never release PTS builds, and I never release builds before the patch comes out. And in some ways, you could say, oh, that might hurt your numbers because you're not the first on the market with the build. But the way I look at it, I always release a build that I'm playing, have played, and like. I very rarely have to switch up my build from what I was playing because I got to try everything already. So, I mean that keeps me plenty busy, especially now. But I've been trying to like cut down that amount of time because, of course, I have all these side projects. I'm doing several like real life projects besides ESO, and yeah, I'm a workaholic. I'm probably working 14 or 15 hours a day on different things. Sometimes it's ESO, sometimes it's not. And I'm married, so that's a time commitment, a great one, the most rewarding. But it's time. So the thing I usually cut out is sleep, actually, which I have to get better at. But I'm kind of a 5 hour per night person, and then I wake up and work all day, and then take a quick break in the afternoon, and then work all night.
We'll have to get your Twitch schedule, and we can maybe put your Twitch. I guess you said it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Is that right?
Yep, 9:30 Pacific until around 12:30. And then, oh yeah, also with that, I'm now doing private lessons, which has been so fun. I love doing the private lessons. I'm trying to keep it to 2 times a week, like 2 appointments per week. I've been kind of doing 3 a week, but it's been great. So no regrets, just I have to find the right balance of scheduling things out.
Yeah. And so with the hands-on training and stuff like that, the best way for them to do that would be to reach out to you. We're going to put your Discord link in the descriptions below, and we'll also put maybe a link to your Twitch, so that way they can tune in if they see, and then they can immediately start following you if they haven't done that already.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd say the best way to get a hold of me is usually Discord. Most people that are signing up for training sessions are either in the server already, trying to get the resources they can that are free, which are great, and I try to make that of great value. I also, for Twitch subs, I give discounts on the one-on-one sessions, and I've got this cool little thing that I started doing called gameplay tips, and it's another read-only chat in my Discord that's only available to Twitch subscribers, and I update that every week with a little pro tip and a little gift to go along with it, so that you get a visual for what I'm explaining. So it's like a little 1-minute tip every week with a little short video, and it's super cool. I really enjoy that, trying to bring value to everything I do for people, because I've gotten a lot of support and I really appreciate that. But not everyone can do one-on-one sessions, and they don't scale well either, because like I can't one-on-one session with everyone in the game, though I would like to. If I could, I'd spend almost all my time helping people to get better. It's just the most rewarding thing. So I like doing these little projects that are like quick little tips for people that have been supporting me to try and get them the value out of their sub.
In defense to your comment for not being the first person to put out a build, I mean, does it really apply to you though? Because your builds to me, they feel so unique with how low you run on like max resources and stuff. Like that always seems to be the one critique of like Grimhallow. He's always running so low. Like, how does he even do it? But then when you watch the videos, he manages his resources well. So
Yeah,
I feel like even if you weren't gonna put out the first video, it wouldn't even matter, because what you run is not personal, but unique to your play style. And unless somebody's playing exactly like you, I personally haven't heard of them yet. But yeah, I don't know.
well, hey, I appreciate that. And that's kind of my philosophy with it is it may be the case that someone came up with my build before me or whatever, but I really don't pay a ton of attention to that. The idea is I want to put out the best build possible every single time. And the only way for me to guarantee that is to is to try it myself, right? So though
Mhm.
I don't see it as a race with other people. And so it's hard to tell how that's affected me. I mean, I think I could get better numbers if I cut a few corners and put things out quickly, but I'm not sure that I would have seen the same long-term growth. Like if my builds ended up changing 2 or 3 times per patch and I'm like, oh, I put that out, but I actually don't like it at all. And I thought I would, but I didn't really test it fully. And I immediately found a bunch of situations where it's not good. Like, for example, and what I usually do is when a new patch comes around, I'll just run what I was running to see is it still functional and what am I missing? Like, and again, how I describe theory crafting is coming up with a build that solves a problem. Usually that means that the highest possible damage with the lowest possible defense. But for example, when Mythics came out, the first thing I wanted to know is, well, are other people going to be at a huge advantage over me if I don't run a Mythic? And I actually found that to not be the case. And I ended up getting all the Mythics and trying them. But the big thing is, for all the Mythics, excuse me, you're usually dropping damage in order to gain them, right? You're either dropping damage or you're playing into some other caveat. Like, you're either like losing the Master Bow and you can gain that damage back, but then you're losing Venom Arrow because a lot of people will run, like say Clever Back Bar is super popular. And I endorse it. That's a great setup. But then you lose the Master Bow. And a lot of people are like, okay, well, you can lose Venom Arrow, but that doesn't matter because Mark does more damage. Well, then you're telegraphing who you're going to attack, and it means that you can't bash people from range. So if that's a big part of my playstyle, that's a problem. I want to fight 6 people, and if one of them is going to be rezzing on the side of the field, I can't keep running over to him. And even in a bunch of the videos I put out, I showed examples of this where someone dropped a Destro on a dead body to start rezzing. Well, I'm not going to run into that with 6 guys beating on me. So what am I going to do? If I'm using Mark, that's just not an option. So, it's one of those things where I'll start with the build that I currently have and say, hey, how has the meta changed? Which is the whole point of the new meta videos. And what have I done to adjust? And what should I do to adjust? And if I can keep the highest damage possible, for me, it's damage and utility. Recovery and defense are great, but excess in recovery and defense get you nothing. Excess in damage gets you faster kills, right? Excess in utility gets you shorter fights because you can bash people from like less reses, less threats, easier fights, higher uptime on certain status effects. But defense and recovery get you nothing. So run with as few of those as you can manage, and everything else should go into damage. And then you have to figure, well, who am I fighting against and what are they doing? If defense has gone up in a patch and everyone's running tankier setups, well, maybe you need more damage. And you can run less sustain because you're going to be able to get heavy attacks in. And maybe if it's a higher damage patch, you actually need more max health to tank some of that, or higher health recovery with a healing nerf. There are all sorts of little things that you can adjust. And so that's kind of how I approach building. And I think that's paid off for me over the long run, because when someone sees that my video has gone up, they know after all these years that they can generally trust my build video, that I'm not going to cut corners, and I'm actually going to test everything. I don't just say, oh, that'd be a good build and it might be better, but I just didn't have time. Well, then I just won't put out the video. I will test it if I think it could be good or better.
Right. Do you have like a group of people that you talk with during your theory crafting? Because I know for me, I talk to Grim or Papa or some of my other friends like Emma, and I'll run it by them and see what they think, if maybe make a change here or there, anything like that. So do you have like a group that you talk to? And I know when I make my support builds, they're all typically for the Imperial Sewers. So do you duel anybody as part of testing your build, or is it strictly just open world testing?
I will mainly open world test. I think a couple questions there. I'll try to answer them all. But I mainly test my builds in the environment that I'm going to use them.
Okay.
Because dueling is a very different environment from open world. Instead of having 6 mediocre guys chasing you around, you've got one good guy who is focusing you. And he has built himself in such a way that he has cut out things that he doesn't need. He doesn't need an escape method. You're stuck in an arena, right? There's no chance that 10 other people are going to come zerg him in a 1v1. right? Like if you're building for duels, you can get rid of a lot of recovery because you'll always be able to heavy attack because there's no chance of like 3 people dropping an ult on you. There's only one person that can drop an ult on you, and you can probably survive one ult, so you can afford to heavy attack. So you just build for duels very differently. And so I'll only quote unquote test like a build in a duel if I'm fighting someone else's open world spec. But even then, I almost always test in open world by just playing around with it. And part of the test is, hey, can I collect a lot of clips with this build? Like, is this easy to make a video for? And if it is, well, then I'm pretty inspired to make the video because it's like, dude, I've tried this. It's awesome. I love it.
Nice.
And if it's not, then I'll just try something else. And that's kind of the main metric. When it comes to coming up with builds and changes, I talk to some people, but not often. I kind of consider myself like a soloist when it comes to building videos, but not for any particular reason. And I don't think that's like a particularly good way to do it necessarily. I love talking to my friends who are experts in other classes and hearing what they're running and what their reaction to the patch is, because a lot of times that informs me in new ways that I hadn't thought of. I really like listening to other Stamblades videos after I've kind of come up with what I'm going to run. Then I like to go out and hear like, oh, this is really cool. This is really good, because so many videos like have misinformation, and it's really, really not only tempting, but easy to negligently go, oh, this person said it, so I'm just going to take that as fact and proceed based off of that. Well, no, I like to test everything myself. Everything. So there's not a ton of point in me listening to other people's videos if I don't take their advice. I think it's interesting, and sometimes people give me cool ideas, but I don't usually listen to other Stamblades until after I've come up with what I'm running. But before I make my video. Does that make sense? So
yeah,
I'll figure out what's good, listen to other people, and then I'll like kind of create a synthesis of that for my build. And usually my build remains unchanged because a lot of other good players have just developed slightly different styles. I know one of the most popular styles in the game right now includes dropping all sustain and using torque. I don't actually like using the torque at all, because though it is a very, very powerful and efficient form of sustain, it forces you to go on the defense, right? Like, in order to get your stamina into like a place that's actually good, you have to constantly be using your magicka, and that is not a good thing. That means that like every couple of GCDs, you have to stop attacking to cast a buff or to cloak twice or to hit a shade or, race against time or something. And that means that you're not attacking. So if you've got someone that's tanky and you're trying to pressure him, well, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Because there's some people that are just too tanky for that. And I like to win against the widest variety of people in the widest variety of situations. And so I'm willing to give up some burst damage to get that consistency. So, everyone runs things differently. But I would say ultimately at the end of the day, there aren't too many people that I theorycraft with. I'll chat with my friends and I'll tell them what I'm running, and I'll take feedback from them, like as we're playing, like if I'm just duoing. And I've got a couple of really, close friends that are good at the game, and we share ideas around and, just meme and stuff. But I wouldn't say that I have like a group that I hang out with and come up with secret builds.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, no, that's kind of interesting what you said about that. You like to preferably talk to experts in other classes, and then just to kind of cement how what you're going to do in those types of situations and things. Yeah, I guess I kind of do the same with, I know with one of my buddies, Emma, he's a necro enthusiast, and he'll come up with these builds, and I kind of picture myself in that position when he gives me this with these scenarios. I'm like, well, with you have this and this on your bar, what are you going to do when you come in with this situation? And I think, how would I be able to solve that, whether I'm in his shoes or with mine, or even just counter his build with what I'm doing from a support standpoint. So that's kind of a interesting bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Shared.
I can actually give you an example right off the bat. Are you guys familiar with Rage, like Rage Line Pride, the Stamplar?
Yeah.
I was running with him a few patches ago, and he was telling me about how he was trying out Bloodthirsty because he doesn't have an execute, and he was just giggling to himself and saying, "Dude, 25% health is the new 0." And I would watch him, and it'd be like pressure, 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 and then just boom, the person's dead, like out of nowhere. They would drop to 25% and then gone, you know? And I was like, oh crap, dude. Like, and I knew from the very beginning that that wasn't something that would work on my setup just because of the difference between kind of a bursty single target attack setup and something that has pressure and then an explosive burst, particularly like Power of the Light with jabs. Like jabs is a lot of pressure and then suddenly it explodes. And if it like Power of the Light very rarely is the final killing blow. Like it's a big burst, but it's not like an execute. It's not like Sork's execute.
And it sounds like it sounds like it should be though.
It is when you're running Bloodthirsty on all of his jewelry, right? When that
right. Well, and even if they don't die, then the jabs are going to kill him for sure.
Right.
You know, like because you can execute with jabs if you got 1 or 2 Bloodthirsty on. Like it's just not gonna. They're not gonna make it out. And so learning things like that from my friends who are playing other classes and thinking, oh, that's a really cool idea that I would never have thought about as a Standblade because I don't have that kind of pressure that's constant and has that tempo. But what could I do that's similar? Or how could I leverage that idea? Or how can I not die to that idea? You know, like these are all things that go through my head. So I love hearing what other classes are doing because they often play very similarly that it's tempting to get pulled in by their builds, but it also so differently. And you have to think about what those differences are. And that's how you're going to like maximize the potential of your own class is by playing to its strengths.
Nice.
Where would you find, so when we're talking like open world, and it would be like Cyrodiil or Imperial City, like I had said, I hadn't actually seen you in game until just last week or the week before we ran into you and another person in the sewers. Where do you find the value for each one of those? Like, what do you want to get out of open world Cyrodiil? When you're logging in and you're going to Cyrodiil, what are you hoping to get there? What are you hoping to get in the sewers or in the districts? Like, how did those locations rate to you? I guess what's your thought process with those?
Well, if I was to choose one as a preference, it's Cyrodiil for sure. I way prefer it over IC, and that's for a couple of reasons. I think the biggest one is cultural. The types of groups that run an IC are like small, organized, and a lot of times can build the same way that, you know, how earlier I was talking about how duelists will build a certain way. Well, IC people can build a certain way because they're never going to really encounter a big group, you know, and there are a few like Megazergs that go around, but on average, you can fight like 4v4s and 5v5s. So people in IC tend to build really, really tanky. A lot of times they can afford to run Imperial Physique. And so the whole build philosophy is very different there. And so is the mindset. I would actually say that even though the groups are smaller, they're much Zergier. Like in open world, you're a lot more likely to get like respect duels where a group of people will come up to you, not attack you, and they want to take turns fighting you. And you're more likely to get ganked in IC. So if you're 1vxing, you'll find that someone is just walking around in stealth trying to win over Telvar, and they'll gank you in the middle of your fights, which is like, you know, more power to them. That's a fair way to play the game, but it doesn't make for an appealing PvP environment. It's also, you know, like the common Emp Ring problem that is obviously, it is a real problem in Cyrodiil. Like people only play on the Emp Ring. Well, IC is still an Emp Ring, it's just smaller. And there's less to do there. So I tend to get bored there more quickly. I love the IC event because people go down into the sewers. That's my favorite area of IC. I love fighting in the sewers. Those fights are so dynamic and fun. And it's a very refreshing break from Cyrodiil. But Cyrodiil, you can get bigger fights. You have more room, more things to play with. And you can finish fights more frequently because in IC, people don't have to walk so far to respawn. And there's nowhere you can take them where they won't, like, if they own the district, you're never going to win a 1vx, right? Because they're just going to respawn in the district and run back. So if you've got more than 6 people, you're never going to win. They're just going to keep coming forever. But if you're on a resource, you can win that fight. And so that's kind of a big difference, like as a 1vx style player, being able to finish fights, having more room to fight in, having more area, like more interesting places to fight, even though a lot of times, I'll just be fighting on a resource. It's better than fighting on an IC flag. And I enjoy both, but for sure, it's a no-brainer. Cyrodiil all the way.
I love that. I love hearing that too, like hearing your just your idea of that. For me, I enjoy Cyrodiil. I remember the first time I went to Cyrodiil, it was just impressive, like jaw dropping, just wow, like siege going off, we're taking a keep and all these people and things are blowing up and people are dying and holy crap. And I remember how cool that was. But I never got in that scenario, I never got those moments where it was always overwhelming odds or overwhelming numbers, and there didn't seem to be, and maybe this is my evolution as a player too, but I just never had that moment where I was like, where I felt I leveled up out there. And so Imperial City came, and from that moment on, I just kind of became a sewer rat, and I basically live down there. I'd love to see you down there more, like the imminent possibility of a Grimhallow attack would be, I would love that. I would love that. And because we go through there, we run it down. We'll go through there, run all the way to one base door, all the way to the next base door, looking for every player that we can, every group we can. We don't run from groups unless it's baiting them into, stretching them out to kill them. And we really try, and if people are outside of our base or in EP sewer tunnels, killing people, we are the ones that answer that call, and so I kind of like that. That's a lot of fun. And I think you hit the nail on the head about the difference in builds 100%, because that's how I build my characters. I build my characters with a lot of resistances and a lot of recoveries, and then I find a place for the weapon damage, because for me, I don't have a problem killing people most of the time with the 4K weapon damage, 4,500. And even when we run into the really, really good players, I really love that. I love running into those players, but I'd love to see you down there more, and it would be amazing. So,
well, maybe I'll wander down there a few more times a month. Well, when Cyrodiil's laggy, a lot of times I'll just be like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, man. So hey, maybe I'll just default to the sewers then for a little bit, because I've been kind of jumping into no CP every now and then. Since Eternal Vigor has come out, it's made no CP play a lot more consistent, because Eternal Vigor is really good. It's been, like, in no CP, it gives you everything you need. Everything that's lacking, it gives you basically, just a little portion of your CP back. And so that it's a big equalizer there.
Yeah, it's God tier for no CP and BGs, right?
Oh yeah.
Icy and I we have DC characters as well, and if you want to ever group up and go up into the districts and just lock down the districts, we would love to do that too.
That's so funny, because we can do that. We don't have to. It's not faction locked. That's nice.
Right.
Not a fan of the faction locks.
No. Well, I mean, you can ask Icy. Like, that's why we have an AD and DC characters. If we're running through the sewers and there's too many EP running around, then what do you refer that to, Icy?
There needs to be a balance in all things.
Yeah, there needs to be a balance in the force, and so we'll log over to DC or AD, and we'll come through and balance the sewer.
Yeah, keep it going. Keep the battles continuing. Yeah, for sure. And there are some legitimate reasons to want to have faction lock, and that's one of them. Is that's the way things were. There were a ton of players that would just, as soon as they started losing, or I'm sorry, as soon as they started winning too much, they would swap factions, so there'd still be a fight. But then you've got the people who care about the campaign, who are like, well, now we can never win, because every time we start winning, they swap factions. But the worst are the people who, and no offense to anyone listening, but who believe that the opposite is true. That like when one team starts winning, that everyone jumps on that team. Like, I don't think that many people care. Like to be on the winning team in Cyrodiil after the game's been out 6 years, 5 years? Yeah, 6 years. Does anyone? I mean, obviously people do care about the campaign, but it's like, I don't think people are conspiring against you, my man. Like these aren't big, elaborate, they're giant Zergs filled with randos. And even the organized Zergs aren't very intelligent in how they play the map. Like they'll just run from one keep to the next, and like ult dump together. The best way to take the map in Cyrodiil is to have basically 1vxers split into 5 groups of 4, and then take all 5 home keeps at the same time. And then what'll happen is the big AD Zerg, if you're capping all 5 like AD home bases, will go and stop one of those from succeeding, and they'll lose the other 4. And then as soon as they run to go take back another one of their Zergs, you just recap it. Right? If you've got 4 sets of guys that are flagging keeps at all times, the Zerg is not going to win, because travel is a huge barrier to fighting. So like that's how you would win the entire campaign. And I've seen people do it. Like when a 1vxer wants to emp, he can get a bunch of his 1vx buddies and they'll do exactly that. They'll go for emp by completely shattering the foothold of the enemy faction. But big Zergs don't do that because they can't fight adequately in groups of 4, because they don't really like teach you how to play the game. They, in fact, probably teach you how to get worse because you're running in a huge group and relying on other people for healing and defense. And so it becomes a problem. If you run with a group like that for too long, you'll actually kind of start to atrophy. Your reflexes don't sharpen. You're not going to dodge snipes well. You're going to get killed more often. So basically what I'm saying here is that no one's conspiring against you to like take all the flags and win the campaign, because if they wanted to, it wouldn't be that hard.
It's kind of it's kind of funny that you mentioned that bit, because I kind of feel like that happens a little bit in IC. When I remember Shadow and JR, they would down in Imperial City, if they're playing on EP normally, and if there's if they're playing on EP, there'll be a lot of just EP PvEers or whoever's just start coming out the woodwork, and then once they deem it too many on the field, they switch sides to DC, and then they kind of balance it all out, and then all of a sudden more DCers start showing up, and then they go back, and then they keep playing the field over and over again. And I kind of think that does happen.
Well,
where...
in IC it's the opposite, because in IC you win by making money. So if you're there to farm Telvar, the only way you can do that is by only owning all the districts. You don't care about the PvP there. You're just there to farm bosses. You have to be with the majority.
Right.
In Cyrodiil, it's different. Winning isn't making more money. Winning is a 30-day campaign. Mm-hmm. So jumping on the winning side isn't that easy to do, because that could change. And you can't, so you're going to PvP equally on 3 factions. There are people that would do that, but it's not a conspiracy. And not like in a 30-person guild, switching sides is not that easy. Like everyone's going to have 3 characters leveled up of the same exact type so that you can run your group. So then you've got to have 30 guys swap their gear over to another character. Like it's totally different from IC, where the goal is to own all the districts and make money, which is easy to do. You can do it in an hour. Whereas the campaign is a 30-day fiasco with hundreds of players. So I would say it's the opposite. I would expect to see that behavior in IC, because the reason people go there is to make Telvar. But the reason people PvP is not for the AP. AP doesn't get you that much. Telvar, you can change to gold extremely easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
AP, you cannot. It's a lot more difficult.
I think that there's levels to it with Imperial City, at least the way we treat it. If we're in the sewers, we could be trying to farm Telvar and make money. So that's one thing. So if it's a very casual night, we've got, music on in the background and we're just killing mobs and whatever players we come across, but we're not trying to get too sweaty. Then the next level up is we're hunting players in the sewers or cleaning the sewers and specifically looking for fights in the sewers. And then the next level up from that is going up to the districts, because in the districts are your more coordinated groups, and you do have a heavy mixture. But if you're going to find the majority of your coordinated groups in the districts, because they're trying to capture the districts and they're looking for fights as well. And so if you really want to get sweaty, you go up to the districts and you take your group against other groups, and then there's a lot of fodder as well. So you're going to have the bow gankers up on AD spawn that never jump down.
Right.
You know, the 10 DC that jump down and run into, you know, your Dawnbreaker and just disintegrate, you know. But then you're going to have that group of 5 or 10 that are just like you were talking, ultra tanky, well coordinate their ult dumps, and they're moving using line of sight and things like that. And so there's layers to it. That's how we look at it. And I kind of like, you can find the fights too. Like if you want to find the fights, you want to find somebody, you just go up to the districts and you won't have to wait long. So
yeah, very true.
I
think
go ahead.
Oh yeah, no big thing there. One thing I guess I would say that I prefer about Cyrodiil is that I would say the fights are more different. Like district fights it's a much smaller group of people that hang out in IC, and it's a lot of the same people. You get a few new people here or there, but when people want to try out PvP for the first time, IC can be a little intimidating. So you get a lot of fresh blood in big PvP guilds that do raids, and then over the course of the night, they split off into smaller groups that are completely new and different groups. So you end up fighting a lot of different people, and some of the same people too. But in IC, I feel like, you know, after I've done it for 500, 600 hours, that I'm getting the same fight over and over again. And like I said earlier, they're a lot harder to finish because if you own the district, you're just going to walk back.
Yeah.
But that's not to say I don't like IC. What I think they should do is revitalize it. There's a ton they could do to make IC a hot place to be. I'd love to see that.
Can you share one or two of your ideas or thoughts?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing would be to have more that you can do with Telvar. B, incentivize people to go down into the sewer part by like either increasing the amount of Telvar. Well, for one, I think that bosses down in the lower part of the sewer should drop as much Telvar as a boss in the district when you have all the district flags. They're way more difficult. You're fighting them in a smaller space, and they have like these healing orbs. You got to give people reasons to go down with a group of 6 people, and that would be one of them. That would also stop people from faction swapping so quickly to the winning side. Because if you can get a whatever, what is it, 6, 7 districts? Whatever. If you can get a full district tick off of a boss down below, then you don't have to swap sides every time someone else is winning. But for the districts themselves, I think the flags should not be on the inner circle of the ring. It means that people who want to like fight over the flags only probably ever even fight in 1/10 of what the districts have to offer. Because they're just on the very inner circle of what is basically a small circular PvP area. They don't go into the city part. At least they very rarely do, compared to just going from flag to flag. And then also, why are there load screens in between the districts? You should just be able to walk between them. Like, the sewers down below are a bigger space to play in than upstairs, even if you combined all the districts into one map. I don't really understand why they have to be separated by load screens. Part of it is for the invincibility, but you could just add doors randomly throughout the city that are like safe havens. You don't have to have them in between districts. I mean, there are a lot of little things that they could do to make it more accessible, more dynamic, and more rewarding.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Do you think that the difference in so Cyrodiil's having a lot of problems with abilities and lag and things like that. You think the difference between Cyrodiil and the districts, Imperial City, is the fact that it's divided up into smaller zones?
No, I don't think so.
No,
because the like lag and Cyrodiil problem, it's nothing new to us, but as far as problems go, it is relatively new. It's certainly escalated with the number of calculations that the game is doing. Like as the game has progressed, Cyrodiil has gotten laggier and laggier. And, a big part of it is going to have to do with pop. I'm not convinced that the load screens in between the doors are helping the districts. I think if anything, they're just limiting the population and how fun the districts are to fight in.
Interesting. You probably don't want to bring this up, but I'm going to bring it up. You are taking donations right now. You're trying to get the Mundus stones at the dojo at your home where you're training people and things like that, and trying to add a extra convenience for people. And so if anybody's listening and you're of a giving nature, if you could reach out to Grimhallow and find out what Mundus stones he needs and contribute to the cause, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm blushing again. Yeah. I mean, you can definitely donate by reaching out directly, which would be really cool. It's really fun to know, who's donating a Mundus stone. But in addition to that, I always encourage people to donating is great, right? I love donations. I'm not going to turn them away. Why am I saying it weird? I'm really putting an emphasis on the O. Doesn't matter. I love donations. It's great. But I also believe that you could totally get, more for your money. So if you're on PCNA, you should sign up for a training session. Instead of just donating money, get something out of it. I'd love to hang out with you, spend some time, help your PvP game. If you're on console and you're thinking of donating, like I can do a session where I look at your gameplay video and we just chat about your builds for an hour and like gameplay philosophy. And, like I don't, if possible, why give away something for nothing? I like to give back. And so donating is great, but feel free to like sub or sign up for a session or have me look at your clips. And I would be so happy to do that, because for me, like one of the great joys of this is seeing people get better over time. It's just so rewarding. So donations are great. I'll give you guys my my Streamlabs link that people can use, and that's like how Twitch people donate if they're not going to use bits. If they want to use like USD or whatever their local currency is, they can do it via the Streamlabs link. So you guys can post that wherever you want. But feel free to reach out to me on Discord. It's really easy to find me and get a hold of me. I accept messages from anyone, and we can set something up.
That's awesome. Did you have anything else, Icy? I was going to move on to our last topics.
Nope. Is this the Microsoft stuff?
Maybe.
Oops, spoiler.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So Microsoft purchased Bethesda and a lot of the titles that Bethesda owns, and Elder Scrolls Online. All of them, yeah. And $7.5 billion. $7.5 billion. And so Microsoft purchased that. So I guess we're under the Microsoft banner at this point.
Mm-hmm.
What changes do you foresee because of this? What's your thoughts on the Microsoft purchase?
Oh, man, I'm excited. I think it's a really good thing. I mean, so first of all, Microsoft bought ZeniMax Media Company, which owns ZOS, ZeniMax Online Studios, and owns Bethesda and actually several other developers. So they now own the rights to Doom, Dishonored, Fallout, the Elder Scrolls series, obviously, Prey. Like they own a lot of titles now. ZeniMax, like media company actually, or media group, owned a lot. And so Microsoft now has all of them. I think the biggest question on people's minds are like, especially when it comes to the ESO community is this going to increase performance, which is the big hope. And the fear is, are like Xbox players going to get some big advantage? When it comes to ESO, I don't think so. I would be shocked if we don't see either like special sales via the Microsoft Game Store, maybe, or what's it called? Their Game Pass, like Microsoft's Game Pass.
Oh, Xbox Game Pass.
Xbox Game Pass. I'm pretty sure if ESO is not already in there, it probably will be, along with several other titles. So I bet if you're just paying the $15 a month for Game Pass, you get ESO as one of those titles. which might increase the Xbox pop. That would be really cool. I would expect that ZOS would be getting an influx of money. ESO is a cash cow, and like it really is. It makes a lot of money, a lot more than say Fallout 76 has made in its later days in life because it's so bad. Like really, despite all of its flaws, ESO is a goldmine, and it's really fun. It's easily currently the best MMO on the market in terms of action combat. Nothing even comes close. And it's not the most popular MMO for a variety of reasons, but it's got the Elder Scrolls IP, and it has an amazing combat system. I would expect that Microsoft would invest in that. I mean, that's the whole reason that they did this buyout isn't because they're developing a competing MMO. They just want this one. Well, and really they want all of the single player games that are going to boost sales of their new Xbox. But I'm sure there are plans to incorporate funding into ESO to keep it as profitable as it is for 5+ years easily. So I'm optimistic. Does that mean new servers? I don't know. But man, wouldn't that be great? Like Xbox is a fantastic publisher as it is. They're able to take games and do good things with them. And they've made mistakes too, as all companies have. But I remember, naysayers to them buying like Minecraft. Like they don't have anything like Minecraft. What are they going to do with it? And they've completely revitalized it. They've made Minecraft cool again. And if they can do even a fraction of that kind of success with ESO, man, I would love to see that.
And put it on multiple platforms, like they're not just moving it to Xbox only, they made
for sure
on Nintendo and PlayStation. So
yeah, exactly. So I think we can hope to see the same kinds of things. Like with those titles, you're exactly right. I'm not too afraid that they're going to make the Elder Scrolls an Xbox Windows exclusive thing that cuts Sony out. But I wouldn't be surprised if like maybe Starfield, which is, one of Bethesda's other up and coming games, ends up being either exclusive or free on Game Pass or, something like that.
Yeah. What level of concern do you have about the AoE changes or testing that's going on and kind of going against how you had talked about how dynamic the battle system and everything is currently, but we have that testing going on? How fearful are you that something along those lines is going to be implemented and change what we know?
Well, I do think there have to be some changes to the ways AoEs work. I think the changes that they proposed initially were terrible. But this is actually a win of the class rep system, oddly enough. We don't hear a lot about them, but they're still hard at work. And one of the last tests is actually a reduction in group size and changes to the way that healing works cross groups. And that's actually a really big deal because one of the big goals of ESO was to make PvP and PvE as similar as possible, right? So if one gets CP, the other gets CP. And there have been two major contradictions to that philosophy that the game should be balanced to accommodate both. And the two problems are battle spirit, which, cuts healing and damage and increases health. As far as balance goes, it works pretty well, but it probably shouldn't be that way. It's more difficult to balance things without it, but it probably shouldn't have it because that's confusing to new players who pop into PvP and are like, oh, hey, I can't heal. I can't really do damage. It says I should be doing 10K, but I'm only doing 5K. What's happening? I have more health. What the heck? And these things aren't well explained. So that's a problem. But the bigger problem is that group size doubles. The biggest PvE trial in the game is 12 players. Why suddenly in PvP do you have 24 player groups? I mean, and the reason is because one of the big selling points of this game initially in 2014 was to have giant, massive PvP siege battles. But that model clearly doesn't function anymore, and it functions so poorly to the point where people don't even care anymore. Like big siege battles still happen, but that's not the sell. If the siege battles were smaller but they worked, even the big PvP groups couldn't complain about that if their abilities worked. So there is a real problem and they do have to address it. I think things like cooldowns on AoEs and ramping cost increases more vague, unexplained things are a bad idea. I think it would be better if they overhauled the system of finding a group, if they taught you PvP mechanics more readily. Like, no one knows what light attack weaving is. That's a big problem with the early game. Like, questing doesn't teach you that you should light attack in between every ability. It doesn't, but that's a huge deal in all endgame. Like whether you're PvE or PvP, that's a big deal. So if I was to say, like what they should do, I think capping group sizes to 12 is a good idea. It's consistent with their philosophy that they should have equity, or not equity, but like similarity between PvP and PvE, continuity. That's a good word for it. There should be continuity. You should understand that just 12 is the group size, right? That's as big as they get. That is also going to mean, so one thing that is proposed that's going to be tested later on is you can't heal people outside of your group. And why is that a good thing? Well, it's a bit of a bummer because it's not as continuous, technically. There's not the same level of continuity between that and PvE, but it means way less calculations, way fewer, and it means smart healings get a big nerf. And the biggest problem with PvE or PvP raids is that you have all of these smart heals going off. Sometimes you have entire groups just dedicated to spamming rapid regen just over and over and over. And every time they spam rapid regen, the game has to find everyone around them, just rank them all by where their health is in that moment, then pick the 3 of them to heal, then give them a hot. And it just does that over and over and over. So for every person doing that, you're querying the server, hey, there are 80 people in my area. Who's the weakest and who should get these heals and who's not going to get these heals? And you've got 20 people doing that every second. That's a huge calculative load for the server. And that's a problem. It also means that keep fights go on forever because people are always healing. If you're a solo player and you hit someone, they will likely be healed. You can completely incap them, get them down to execute level, and before you can even cast the execute, 4 rapid regens have hit them. And they're back up to 80% health. So it causes a big issue because that means fights go on longer. More people come to the fight because it's been going on longer. And with more people, you get even more AoEs, and that's a big problem. So there is a real problem to address, but I don't think that putting timers or cost increases makes sense, nor is it an elegant solution. One other thing I would change is that AoEs should be Zerg busting tools. To me, it's always been weird that giant groups of players have AoEs where solo players have no AoEs. And the reason is because giant groups of players don't aim at people. They just cast buttons and people around them die. Well, that's actually a huge problem because then the bigger the group gets, the laggier they are because they're all casting AoEs, So I think what you need to do is make it so that AoEs are extremely ineffective against solo players. They should be like executes, where they do 4,000 damage against one player and go up 10% in damage for every player that you catch in the AoE. If you Destro ult down one person, it should do almost nothing. But if you Destro ult down 30 people, they should just be toast. They should all be running. They should all be spreading out.
Yeah, see, I like that because while it's adding more calculations, it's also going to remove that ability from a lot of groups' bars because you're not going to sit with this AoE on your bar if by chance you run into another big group where it becomes viable and you could use the ability. If the scaling on it's so poor against 1 or 2 people, not like this, not like, why can't I think of the Magicka set that detonary explodes?
VD.
Yeah, Vicious Death. Not like a Vicious Death, because Vicious Death's going to explode for what, 27k now, 29k now, in a 4-meter radius or 3-meter radius around everyone that dies. But it shouldn't be something like that. It should be scaled. If an AoE hits this one person, it's going to hit them so insignificant that it's not even worth them equipping that ability. They need to become more solo. Like you were saying, you have so many people that are crutched by running in groups regularly that they can't do a 1v1 at all. They don't even know what abilities to run. They're not running armor buffs. They don't know how to heal themselves or how to turn the fight around after, you know, it starts going
And the big
south.
problem with that is that fundamentally fights have to end, right? Like someone has to win. But if you have two giant groups and you're both healing faster than you're doing damage, that's also a problem. And right now, AoEs are balanced in such a way where they have these low damage tooltips because it's not cool to do more damage than single target abilities when you don't have to aim. And the devs know that. So AoEs, even though they're very strong, have to have slightly lower tooltips. And that means if you're in a group of 20 people and they're all like spamming rapid regen, you're not going to kill them. Like it's a big problem. People have to die. And so by like lowering the group sizes, decreasing passively the effectiveness of heals, and scaling up the way that AoEs do damage based on how many people you're fighting, you're going to see a huge difference in the play styles that people adopt over time. You know, it's not an instant fix, but what it does is it makes people afraid to group up. Like during big events, you know how people don't stand close together on a flag because they're afraid they're going to get bombed?
Yeah.
That should be a fear all the time. You know, I remember when we were complaining about lag, and who was it? The gameplay lead at the time was like, we'll just spread out. Then it won't happen. Well,
Jesus
you can't
Christ.
you can't just tell people to spread out. You have to encourage them to spread out by incentivizing spreading out. And one way to do that is to make it dangerous to be in a big group. Like if your group is too big, you risk just exploding.
Yeah. You know, another thing too, Icy had brought this up. It's almost like the armor or gear development team or teams, whoever's working on coming out with all the proc sets and everything right now, it's almost like a proc set requires calculations as well. It's going to be every dot that ticks has to be calculated versus their resistances and all these other factors. And so we got proc sets galore right now going off because, like you said, people need to die. And but we're having all these performance issues in the game where they're talking about the immense amount of calculations that are going on, and in the same breath, while we're not having very performance everyone's not very happy with the performance of Cyrodiil and abilities not working and bar swapping and all these problems that are happening. In the same breath that all this is going on, and they acknowledge that all these calculations were releasing all these proc sets into the wild. You know, and it's just so weird. Icy had said, I don't think that armor team or the development team for gear is listening or seeing what everything else that's going on in the game right now. Calculations are hurting the game, you know. So
well, and it's tough because you can only go so far with damage sets. Like how many interesting damage sets can you make?
Right.
Like if it just buffs your weapon damage, it's tough, dude. Like the armor designers have a tough job. You got to like reduce the number of calculations, but come up with new and interesting sets that do new things. What? Like, bro, I'm out of a job. What do you mean? How many different forms of Hunding's Rage can I make? You know, and I think the idea of like New Moon where it costs you sustain or it costs you defense or it costs you, maybe you get single target damage but give up burst damage, those are kind of interesting, but you can only take that so far. And eventually you're going to run out of ideas. So they're definitely in a tough position there. So, I mean, yes, maybe sets that play the game for you should be reduced or at least be not as strong. Like if they're going to essentially do your job for you, such as Earth Gore or anything like that, then maybe they should have lower tooltips so that we're not quite as incentivized to run them. Or maybe they should benefit solo players more because there are fewer solo players. Like you shouldn't be able to hit, a proc that affects 20 people. It should only affect one person.
Right.
You know? So there are like kind of ways around it that I think they should consider more closely, but I have a hard time blaming those armor designers because it's like, what do you do, man? Like that's a hard problem to solve. It's not easy. And so I kind of feel like that is a real problem, but it's likely the last one on the list. Because you have to keep coming out with interesting armor. Like, you can't not do that. And
you don't think the content, the next chapter, the next story, the next whatever is enough to keep the masses coming back?
well, you have to have a reason to do it. And usually that's the new armor sets. New armor, new items, new gear, new places to explore. They all kind of go together. If you get a new area, but there's nothing in it, why are you going to go there?
Right.
Like, I hardly visit the new content as is because all I do is PvP, right? So you got to give the widest variety of people an incentive. And for a lot of people, for crafting, that's motifs and armor sets, like armor sets are big game sellers. That's why so many people complain when the new armor that comes out isn't an upgrade over what they have. They're like, well, why am I going to do this? Like, well, dude, we can't, it should be a side grade theoretically, because if it's more powerful, then we're just going to have an endless power creep, which is a real problem in MMOs.
Yeah.
The power creep is real and it's inevitable because you have to come out with stuff that's better than old stuff. That's why, like, the second that New Moon Acolyte came out, it made 40 sets completely irrelevant.
Right.
Every single set that gave you like increased poison damage or increased physical damage or like War Maiden increased magic damage, all of those vanished. Like Hunting's Rage, forget about it. There's a new king in town, and it just made like 40 sets in the game completely garbage by comparison. And that's a real problem that a lot of MMOs have, and it's not easy to solve because you have to come up with new, interesting, cool armor to sell content. And can you sell content without it? Yes, but you will see a difference. Like, people are going to get bored if there's never a new item in the game.
Yeah.
What do you think about new armor sets that require you to sacrifice something? And I guess New Moon being one example where you get all these nice stats, but you have an increased cost to your abilities. And I think on the PTS or the latest patch notes or whatever, I'm not sure if it's a mythic item or just no, it's a regular 5-piece set, but you're getting 10k more armor in exchange for increasing the cost of your dodge roll, sprinting, blocking, and something else. And to me, that just seems absurd. The 25% increase in all those things, why would anybody ever wear that? Do you think it's a good way to come up with new ideas? You get this stuff, but in exchange for taking a hit somewhere else?
I think it's a good idea, but it's difficult. So, like, your objection with that set isn't with what it does, it's with the numbers. Like, even your complaint specifically was 25%. That's absurd.
Yeah.
Well, at what point does that become so absurd that it's overpowered, or like in the other direction? Like, where's the balance there? And so what I was actually going to say initially, but this kind of leads into it, is the thing that you risk with compromises like that is that you risk two things. Either no one is going to use it because it's absurd, like why would I ever do that? Or it's super overpowered, like New Moon. Like, oh, that's not a sacrifice at all. No problem. And that's just tricky to balance. And it's a very, very fine line. Procs are easier to balance because you can just compare their tooltips to other things. How hard is the proc condition to achieve? What's the uptime? And how much damage does it do? Like 3 stats that are pretty straightforward, and you can balance it fairly easily. But when it comes to like, oh, how much resources should people cost? Like, or how much should this increase the cost of things? Well, you got to find out a few really important facts. How often do people dodge? How vital is it that people dodge? Is dodging a skill that punishes new players? The answer is yes. Like, new players get wrecked by dodging, which is why they build to have no damage. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm out of stamina. And instead of thinking, I dodged too much, I got to cool it down, they go, I need 4k stam recovery. And then they have no damage and they get wrecked anyways. So you have to balance all these things. Like, if you're increasing the cost of something, you have to think, is this vital? Vital in what ways? How is this going to affect people? Is this going to be overpowered in PvE? Is this going to be overpowered in PvP? And it's way harder to do.
Yeah. What's your wish list for Microsoft IC? If you could put a wish list together, what are you hoping to see from this purchase?
I would like, first of all, a single player Elder Scrolls game that is good and not bad. I think the last 3 releases from Bethesda in a row have been worse and worse and worse. It's not good. I thought Fallout 4 was the worst RPG that they've ever released, and it was the least of an RPG. It was an action adventure game. You literally couldn't mess up the RPG system. There was no character building, hardly whatsoever. Like, it was just kind of do whatever you want, and your character will just kind of be whatever you play. You know, and that's not an RPG. It was really boring. And so then you had like Fallout 76, which, oh gosh, so bad. And it's just been like, oh, that's why they sold, because they're not doing well. Like, Bethesda doesn't have itself together right now. And I really hope that they come out with a huge improvement. Don't use the same engine that you've been using since 1993, please. Like, that doesn't function at 60 frames a second because the physics are tied to the frame rate. What? That's such an outdated backbone for a video game that it's like jaw-dropping. So develop a new engine, please. Now you have Microsoft money. Make a new engine. That's one. As far as ESO is concerned, I hope that they invest in better technical infrastructure. And honestly, I'm not sure how much they can do here. I'm not sure that pouring money on the problem will fix it, but I hope that they're given every opportunity to make the best, highest functioning game possible. And, you know, like, they have to have artists, and they have to have level designers, and they have to have all of these people to keep creating content, which keeps people coming back. But I hope that with a new budget, they're maybe able to hire a higher proportion of engineers, and or maybe like better hardware, you know. And I don't know, again, I don't know if that'll fix the problem, but I hope that if it would fix the problem, that they now have the resources to do it.
Right. Yeah.
I guess another thing on the wish list would be, I'd love to see improvements to the Crown Store, maybe both in how it functions mechanically. I don't really like the loot box system. I think that's kind of bad, and it's against Microsoft's philosophy of building like consumer trust, which is something they really need to do, because Sony's killing them in that department. Like God of War, Spider-Man, all these amazing single player games that don't charge you for loot boxes. Like, hello, can we get
Yes.
some of that? That's why Sony has so much brand loyalty, is because they have awesome games that don't have fat compromises. They're just good games, you know? And do they make as much money as loot boxes? Not in the short term, but in the long term, they sure have, you know? Like, in the long term, they really have. So I'd like to see more of that in, like, reflected in ESO. I would be excited to see a better long-term, we're here to serve the players mentality and not just juice our whales. But we'll see. That's a little bit more vague. I don't have really particulars on that, but I would love to see Microsoft's take on monetizing ESO in a way that is rewarding for both sides and doesn't take advantage of either people with addiction problems or just people with lots of money to like pay to win. And that's not really the case now. I don't feel like the game is pay to win, but there are certainly barriers in the place of new players. And I think ESO's largely done a good job of doing, like, for example, when armor sets are in new areas, you can still trade. You know, you don't have to own the DLC to wear the armor set. That's a good thing. And a lot of people look over that because that's not a small deal. The fact that you can wear armor from sets that you don't own, that's a big deal. But I'd like to see more things in that direction as a consumer. You know, I want the best possible deal for myself and my friends if we don't decide to buy the content. And I'd love to see what they do with the Crown Store. So, I mean, we'll see. Those would be my major wish lists. I want technical proficiency before anything. But after that, I'd love to see Microsoft's take on monetization.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
How about you? I see what's your wish list from Microsoft? Your Christmas wish list?
Oh man, Grimhallow, he hit everything, and yeah, I would like to play in a nice, ideal environment with very minimal issues, like just being able to see somebody's health bar in the second zone on EP side down in the sewers. That would be great. That would be great. But in addition to everything that Grimhallow said, for the loot boxes, oh, for the love of Christ, please help me. There's so many things I want to buy in the Crown Store that's behind a loot box that I just don't. I don't want to take the chance that I would rather I would instantly spend X amount of money to buy this flat out. Why are you trying to trick me to spend even more money to try and get this item? No, listen, double the price. I don't care. I'll just buy it flat out. But I'm not gonna gamble. That's not my thing. I lost
Mhm.
$5 once in high school gambling. Never again. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
for real.
I'd have to say that my wish list is performance. So I don't care about the next chapter. I don't care about anything. I just want to be able to bar swap. I want abilities to work. I want executes to work again. I want Cyrodiil to work. And the problems that are happening in Cyrodiil are happening even at 1 bar population now. And the same with Imperial City. It'll be 1 bar population, nobody around, can't execute, can't bar swap. And, there's a lot of weird things going on in the game, clipping and flying through walls. I just want performance fixed. I don't care about Mark Arthur, any of that stuff, or ice staff changes or new armor sets. Fix the game you currently have and make it run well, and then make your money off people adding new cool stuff.
yeah,
That's what I want.
I'm glad that you mentioned that bit there, that you don't care about the new stuff, because when I started last September, and since I met you in December, and I started doing PvP almost exclusively, I have not done a single quest since meeting you. It's all been PvP here since December for the last, what, 10 months pretty much for the most part. And I have no desire. Well, I would like to one day go check out Somerset, elsewhere.
They're beautiful this time of year.
Yeah, I would love to go check out those things, but I have so much fun doing PvP, running down the sewers, and just trying out all these builds and stuff, that I'm still several DLCs behind in terms of just catching up with everything that's going on. They don't even have to release any new content. I'd be fine with the way everything is right now, just playing the game, into the fights, and there's already so much gear out there. Trying everything new, I'm good. Just fix the game at the end of the day, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's really hard to argue with that, man. If things work, I think they would have the best video game ever made. For me, at least. Dude,
agree.
if things work, this game is so good.
It really is.
So
We
good.
comment on this every time, like how beautiful it is, and we just wish that it worked. Yeah, it's a beautiful game, and how quick the combat is, and that's what scares us the most about the AoE changes and global cooldowns and all that stuff. It scares us because you're changing a core aspect of why we're here. So
Yeah, no, exactly. People play the game for the amazing mechanics and cool environment, and if you're going to take away half of that, well, good luck, man.
Agreed.
well, do you have anything else, Icy?
Nope. Is it quitting time? Wrapping up?
I think we can get our time cards here and start walking to the do you have any questions for us, or do you have a last message that you'd like to give everybody? We are going to share everything in the descriptions. You just send me a list. If you spell it out exactly what you want in the description for this video, I will copy and paste it and send them right where they need to go. But what else do you have for us?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, just want to thank you guys for having me. This was a lot of fun. Just hanging out and chatting about, my favorite game is something that I'm always happy to do. And for those of you here who are here for me, thanks for coming. Really appreciate the support.
That's
and if you're
everyone's
well, hey, I just want to say, if you're thinking about getting into PvP, you can do it. Like I said at the beginning of this, I really truly believe anyone can PvP. If you want that one-on-one help, you can reach out to me. But you don't have to. I really believe anyone can PvP, and there's a way for you to get good if you believe you can get there. In addition to that, like, thanks to everyone who's supporting me. I really appreciate it. Being able to make content for this game is, been so cool because I really love it. So I'm very appreciative of that. And for those of you who are trying to get better, let me just name the top 3 mistakes, because I wrote that down earlier. The top 3 mistakes that new players make, like my top tips for new PvPers. The first one is is don't overcast your buffs. Everyone always overcasts their buffs. It's tough to maintain your buffs, but if you are overcasting them, you're going to run out of resources. Second one is don't roll dodge too much. That's for the stand blades out there, because you're going to change your builds and make them worse that way. Just watch the little green stuff around your feet and don't double up on your dodge rolls if you don't have to. You got to start practice dodging as infrequently as possible. And the last one is just to keep your healing up. A lot of people will overcast the wrong buffs, but forget Vigor. Vigor's like a shield. Cast it all the time. Or you're taking damage while you're taking damage and after you're taking damage. Instead of roll dodging, Vigor. That's a big deal. That's
awesome.
it. That's it for me.
Thank you for coming on today. Very cool.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I had a great time. And we stayed for a lot longer than I thought too, because it was that great. We've been here, what, like 2 hours?
Yeah, we're coming up on that mark. I've been watching the clock, and the 2-hour limit is how much I got on my recording. So we got about 10 more minutes before it just
Nice, dude.
cuts the video.
Well, man, it went by in a flash. So I appreciate it. You guys do a good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're noobs. We'll figure it out.
It seems pretty good to me. I had a great time. As someone who is a guest appearance, I don't think you could have done much better.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Right. Do you want to tie it up with anything else, Icy, or how you feeling?
No, I'm feeling good. I'm glad we were able to get Grimhallow on. A lot of knowledge shared. I know I learned a lot, and I hope you guys did too. And I think with that, we can do a hard out.
Okay, see you guys.
See ya.
See ya.
You're going to say bye-bye, Argonians.
Bye bye, Rogonian.